they have been after me to a tremendous degree in 2022. I think there's 13 or 14 complaints, each of which culminated in one of these lawsuits. I'm represented by legal counsel. There's so many of them that they're difficult to keep track of. I probably went through 400 pages of documentation this week. And you asked me how I'm doing. Well, first of all, I found it extremely difficult to keep my rage under control.
The College of Psychologists, a bunch of people put in power by the government basically, is threatening to take my dad's psychology license because he's been criticizing the government. This isn't a joke. This has been torturing my family since 2018, seriously bullying my dad in a way that really caused everyone in my family a lot of stress.
According to Peterson, the college's actions were prompted by roughly a dozen complaints submitted over the past 4 years. Notably, none of the complaints were brought by people Peterson interacted with in a clinical context. Rather, they seem to be motivated by political disagreements and only feature vague accusations of harm resulting from some of Peterson's social media rhetoric. He goes on to list some of the accusations of unprofessional conduct levied against him, which include retweeting a comment about the unnecessary severity of the COVID-19 lockdowns, criticizing Justin Trudeau and other politicians, and making a joke about the Prime Minister of New Zealand.
The college has been after me non-stop with complaints since I rose to public prominence in 2016, although not once before that in the 20 years that I practiced as a clinical psychologist. So this isn't the university that's after me, like it was in 2017, 2016. This is the College of Psychologists, which has started pursuing me in 2016 and has never let up. Now, what happens is that anyone anywhere can submit a complaint about me for anything I've done or said, hypothetical or otherwise. And then the college can, and that doesn't matter if they're a client of mine or ever have been, or if I've had any dealings with them, or even if they're the person who has hypothetically been harmed by my behavior. And the college has decided to pursue a sequence of such complaints, even though it's in their power to dismiss them as vexatious or frivolous, which is what I asked for, on the grounds that my social media communication has caused harm to people. And so they've essentially taken out what are the equivalent of more than a dozen lawsuits against me. And I say they're equivalent to lawsuits because the penalty for being found guilty of such misbehavior is quite serious. It can involve re-education, public apology, or even the removal of my ability to practice or to describe myself as a clinical psychologist. And of course, it took me about 10 years, all things considered, to get licensed. It's a very difficult process, and I'm not inclined to give it up lightly.
Getting investigated because of tweets he's tweeted, personal tweets, opinions, things he said on Joe Rogan. It's such a scam too. They're requiring him to do media retraining that he pays $225 an hour for an unspecified amount of time. And then at the end of that training, they decide whether or not he's learned anything and whether he can continue being a psychologist. This isn't even a process that goes to court. It's just this regulatory board of like 12 tyrannical individuals. It's crazy that what you say online can be used to get rid of your license if people don't like you politically.
To atone for his errors, Peterson was told he needs to take a mandatory social media retraining course at his own expense. The course will be considered finished when the college's experts are satisfied with his progress. Naturally, Peterson refused to take the course. As a result, he now faces a mandatory public disciplinary hearing and the possible suspension of his clinical license, while the professionals need licenses to legally practice their field.
I think that's all the complaints, so let's review this. Not a single one of them was levied by a client of mine, present or former. Not a single one of them was levied by anyone I had actually said anything directly to, private or public. There's no evidence whatsoever that I've produced anything regarding harm, because no one has stepped forward to claim harm who is directly harmed. So it's third-party indirect supposition of so-called harm to someone they don't know. And that's the level of evidence that the College of Psychologists is willing to accept as critical. Now, when they responded to me, They said that I've, brought disgrace to the profession and caused undue harm to people.
The tweets they've identified as problematic include the tweet about Elliot Page. Dad's trying to protect kids from being sterilized. That's definitely not appropriate. The tweet about the obese woman on Sports Illustrated. Again, obesity should not be celebrated. It kills people. And then tweets criticizing Justin Trudeau and another member of the Liberal Party, threatening to take your job as a serious threat. Anybody can submit a complaint about a psychologist or a doctor for that matter. Anybody. Doesn't have to be a former client. So for Dad, it's random people on Twitter complaining about him. Out of his audience of 20 million, he has 12 complaints. The college could throw these complaints out, but instead they're threatening him and have been for years, wasting his time, bullying him, and threatening to take his license.
If he loses his license, he will be barred from practicing clinical psychology in Ontario and from representing himself as a psychologist. This isn't the first time the licensing system has been weaponized against professionals with unpopular views. These were not empty threats. One Ontario physician, Dr. Patrick Phillips, had his license suspended in May 2022 for inappropriate COVID-19 treatments and advice.
Lots of people seem to come to my lectures when I am out publicly speaking, saying that I've really helped them in their lives, and that's thousands or hundreds of thousands or possibly even millions of people. And so I think I can stack up a pretty good, plus all the students that I taught at Harvard and the University of Toronto and all my clinical clients, who by and large were pretty damn happy to be working with me and vice versa. It's like, how do you calculate the harm to benefit ratio? And, what evidence do you have that I actually constitute a sufficient threat to the integrity of the profession that you're willing to bring the second harshest actions you have in your arsenal against me? And the answer to that was, we don't have to answer questions like that. And I had like 40 questions like that, none of which were answered. Their answer basically was, we can do whatever the hell we want. And we're telling you, you better go get re-educated or you face a disciplinary hearing.
This is basically the Communist Union at this point, picking on a professor for his opinions on Twitter against the government. It's absurd. If they end up managing to take his license, which will really be hard on my dad, you won't be able to trust your doctor, your lawyer, anybody in Canada if the government is just controlling all working professionals. God forbid you tweet out your opinion about the government. You might have your license taken away.
Will government take away his license, and this will go further towards public hearing? Jordan B. Peterson says in his interview that he's least afraid about public hearing. Let's wait for the upcoming results so we'll get to see in which direction it will go further. What are your opinions about his license cancellation? Feel free to let us know in the comments section below. If you find this content interesting, then give this video a big thumb up and make sure to hit that subscribe button. See you in the next video.